There's a region in California that almost no one talks about, but it is quietly reshaping the entire American economy. Here's the scene. Imagine this. You're driving east from Los Angeles. The skyscrapers gradually disappear. The bustling streets of Hollywood give way to low-rise residential neighborhoods. Then, after driving a few dozen more kilometers, you'll see something strange appear in the middle of the arid desert. Massive buildings, white, flat, stretching for kilometers, packed side by side like giant boxes dropped from the sky. There are no signs explaining what they are. No pedestrians on the sidewalks. Only endless lines of trucks, moving non-stop, day and night. This isn't a scene from a science fiction movie. This is the reality of the Inland Empire, the region people call California's Inland Empire. And what few people know is that this region, once forgotten by the world, is now the only place in California that's actually growing. While Los Angeles is losing population, while San Francisco is witnessing a mass exodus, while most of this state's major cities are shrinking, the Inland Empire is booming. More than 4.7 million people live here, and that number is projected to grow at double the rate of the rest of Southern California over the next 25 years. But this growth comes at a price, and not everyone realizes what that price is until it's too late. So, what really is the Inland Empire? Why has an arid region, once just a distant suburb of Los Angeles, become one of the fastest growing areas in America? Why are hundreds of thousands of people leaving Los Angeles to come here? And why are these massive warehouses appearing in a place that once had only orange groves and empty fields? And most importantly, what is really happening inside those giant white buildings? The answer isn't as simple as you think. It's about geography. It's about globalization. It's about the collapse of the American dream in Los Angeles. And it's about a very strange paradox, that the poorest region in Southern California is becoming the engine that powers everything Americans buy online every day. To understand this, we need to look at a map. If you open a map of California and find Los Angeles, you'll see the city is right on the Pacific coast. To the west is the ocean. To the south, it extends to San Diego. To the north is the San Francisco Bay Area. And to the east. The east is the place people talk about the least. That's where the terrain begins to change in a very unique way. Just east of Los Angeles, there's a mountain range that runs from north to south. These mountain ranges, which Americans call the San Gabriel Mountains and the San Bernardino Mountains, create a natural barrier between Los Angeles and the land behind them. They are over 3,000 meters high. They block the ocean winds from the west. They turn the land behind them into a giant basin in the middle of the desert. That basin is the Inland Empire. Spanning two counties, Riverside and San Bernardino, the Inland Empire is massive in area. San Bernardino County alone is over 20,000 square kilometers, larger than 9 US states combined. It is the largest county by area in the entire contiguous 48 states of the United States. But size isn't the most important thing. What's more important is its location. Look at the map again. The Inland Empire sits right between four poles of a massive economic system. To the west is Los Angeles, a commercial and cultural hub with 18 million people and a GDP of over $1 trillion. To the south is San Diego. To the east are Las Vegas and Phoenix. And to the southwest, just 60 to 90 kilometers away, are the combined ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, one of the busiest seaports in the world. That's the crucial point. All the goods entering America from Asia, clothes from Vietnam, phones from China, electronics from Taiwan, toys from everywhere, they all pass through these two ports. And after entering the ports, they need a place to be sorted, repackaged, and distributed across the country. The coast is crowded. Land is expensive. Building regulations are strict. No one can build a giant warehouse right next to Los Angeles. But 60 kilometers to the east, the land is still cheap, vast, and flat. And so, the Inland Empire became America's warehouse. But this didn't happen overnight. To understand why the Inland Empire is what it is today, you have to go back more than a century. In the late 19th century, this region had no warehouses, no freeways, no dense urban areas. It was a typical agricultural region of Southern California. Arid, wild, but with one thing that set it apart: orange groves. In 1895, the city of Riverside, located right in the middle of the Inland Empire, was recognized as the wealthiest city per capita in the entire United States. That might sound unbelievable when you look at Riverside today, but at the time, the region's orange growing industry was booming. Freight trains ran east from San Bernardino, carrying fresh oranges to supply the entire nation. This was a time when the Inland Empire was truly an empire in the literal sense of the word, at least in the agricultural industry. Then World War II ended, and everything began to change. Like much of America after 1945, Southern California saw a massive wave of migration. Veterans were returning, new families were forming, and they all wanted one thing: a house with a yard and a car. Los Angeles became the symbol of that dream. But Los Angeles quickly ran out of land, so did neighboring Orange County. So real estate developers began to look east. There, behind the San Gabriel Mountains, were vast tracts of undeveloped land. The land was cheap, building regulations were more lenient, and more federal freeways were cutting through the region, connecting it to Los Angeles. Interstate 10, which runs from the Santa Monica coast straight east through Banning, Palm Springs, and eventually to Florida, goes right through the heart of the Inland Empire. Interstate 15 runs north from San Diego through Fontana and Ontario, connecting to Las Vegas. And State Route 60 creates a parallel secondary corridor. These freeways transformed the Inland Empire from a remote rural area into a completely accessible suburb of Los Angeles. The population skyrocketed. From about 800,000 people in 1960, the region reached 1.7 million by 1980. The orange groves were torn down. Tract housing developments sprang up. And the Inland Empire became the epitome of what Americans call a bedroom community. A place where people sleep at night but drive to Los Angeles for work every morning. This was the Inland Empire's first identity. And for decades, that's all it was. But that was about to change in a way no one could have predicted. Let's talk about shipping containers. In the 1990s, global trade began to accelerate at a dizzying pace. China joined the World Trade Organization in 2001. Goods manufactured in Asia began to pour into the American market in historically unprecedented numbers. The price of goods dropped. Americans bought more. And all those goods had to pass through somewhere to get inland. The Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach, located right on the coast of Southern California, became the main gateway to the American economy. By the early 2000s, this was the largest port complex in North America, handling tens of millions of containers each year. But containers can't just sit at the port forever. They need to be taken to warehouses, where they are opened, sorted, repackaged, and sent on their way to consumers. And this is where the Inland Empire's geography became its most powerful, competitive weapon. Industrial real estate developers looked at a map and realized something. The Inland Empire was at the ideal distance from the ports, not too far to make transportation expensive, and not too close for the land to be expensive. The region is located at the intersection of two of the most important federal freeways. It had an abundant supply of cheap labor, and it had thousands of acres of flat land ready to be built on. So they started building. At first, it was just a few small warehouses scattered along Interstate 10. Then it grew to a few dozen, then a few hundred, and then, by 2024, the official number was over 4,000 warehouses in the entire region, occupying over 1 billion square feet of floor space. To put that in perspective, 1 billion square feet is equivalent to about 17,300 football fields laid side by side. That's enough warehouse roof space to cover an entire medium-sized city. In 1980, the Inland Empire had only 234 warehouses. 40 years later, that number had multiplied by more than 17 times. And these aren't small warehouses. Amazon has built fulfillment centers here that are over 100,000 square meters each. Walmart, Target, Home Depot, FedEx. They all have massive facilities located along the region's transportation routes. Amazon's air hub at the San Bernardino Airport alone, one of the company's 8 largest hubs in the entire US and the largest on the West Coast, processes 18,000 packages per hour, every hour, 24 hours a day. And when the warehouses came, people followed. Model, but not the people you might think. The story of migration to the Inland Empire isn't about tech engineers or financial experts leaving San Francisco. This is a story about ordinary families, people who once lived in Los Angeles, but can no longer afford to stay. Let's look at the numbers. In 2021, the median home price in Orange County, just south of Los Angeles, surpassed the $1 million mark. In Los Angeles County, that number was around $800,000. These figures aren't for mansions or luxury homes. This is the median price, meaning an ordinary 3-bedroom house, nothing special. Meanwhile, in Riverside, right in the heart of the Inland Empire, the median home price at that same time was still under $500,000, nearly half the price of Los Angeles. That led to a massive wave of migration eastward. In the 2 decades, from 2000 to 2020, the counties of Riverside and San Bernardino grew by more than 1 million people. New suburban communities like Moreno Valley, Fontana, Eastvale, and Menifee sprang up in just a few years. Thousands of identical houses built on land that was previously farmland or desert. But here is the first paradox of the Inland Empire. People who left Los Angeles because of high costs arrived in a place where the dominant economic sector is warehouse logistics, and that sector pays below average wages. According to data from the University of California, Riverside, the average wage in the logistics industry here is only about 75% of the region's overall average wage. The per capita income of the Inland Empire is in the bottom 25% compared to major metropolitan areas across the United States. People fled Los Angeles because they couldn't afford to live there. But when they arrived in the Inland Empire, they worked in giant warehouses for wages, just high enough to pay for their homes. Homes that are getting more and more expensive because the very wave of migration they're part of is driving up the prices. The median home price in Riverside in 2024 has surpassed the $640,000 mark, nearly double what it was 10 years ago. In San Bernardino, the equivalent figure is around $530,000. The housing affordability trap that people tried to escape in Los Angeles is slowly repeating itself right here in the Inland Empire. But there's something few people talk about, a silent tragedy unfolding right beside those beautiful new homes and those clean, gleaming warehouses. Imagine you live in a quiet residential neighborhood in an area like Fontana or Bloomington. Your house is just a block away from an Amazon warehouse. Every morning you wake up, open your window, and see a line of 18-wheelers on the street in front of you. Every night, even at midnight and 3 in the morning, the roar of diesel engines never stops. And more importantly, you're breathing that air. According to a study from UC Riverside published in 2024, the Inland Empire's 4,000 warehouses generate about 600,000 truck trips every day. Those trips release more than 300,000 pounds of diesel particulate matter, 30 million pounds of nitrogen oxides, and about 50 million pounds of carbon into the region's atmosphere each year. The Inland Empire consistently ranks among the most polluted areas in the United States for both ozone and fine particulate matter, and the geography doesn't help. The San Bernardino Mountains surround the area like a giant bowl. Wind blows into the valley, but can't easily escape. The pollution gets trapped. It accumulates day after day. The region's residents, mostly low-income Latino and African American families, are suffering from higher than average rates of asthma and lung cancer. Studies show that children living near the region's major logistics corridors have a significantly higher risk of developing respiratory illnesses compared to children in other areas. Residents in Bloomington, a small community right next to Fontana, have organized protests against the construction of more warehouses. They aren't against jobs. They are against their homes being surrounded by giant, smoke-belching boxes. They are against their residential land being rezoned as industrial land without their genuine consent. But the decisions to build warehouses are approved by each individual city. There is no single agency governing the entire region. Every small city wants the tax revenue from industrial zones. And so, no one sees the bigger picture until the whole region is already drowning in giant white boxes and diesel fumes. An independent research group sent a letter to California Governor Gavin Newsom, urging him to declare a public health emergency in the Inland Empire and impose a moratorium on new warehouse construction. The response they received was a document citing a plan to transition to electric trucks by 2045. 2045. Meanwhile, the people of Bloomington, Fontana, and Rialto are still breathing today's air. And this is something truly few people know about the Inland Empire. A paradox that even those who live in the region sometimes don't realize. Most of the goods stored in those massive warehouses are not for the people of the Inland Empire. Read that sentence again. The enormous warehouses that stretch for miles, generating hundreds of thousands of truck trips a day, polluting the very air that local residents have to breathe. Those warehouses are not storing goods to be sold to the people of the Inland Empire. They are just way stations. Goods arrive from Asia, stop here for a few days or a few weeks, and then continue their journey east to Denver, Dallas, Chicago, New York. The Inland Empire is the lung through which the rest of America breathes. But it is this very region that bears all the ecological consequences of that process. People here work in warehouses for low wages, handling products they themselves cannot afford to buy. They endure the air and noise pollution from trucks carrying goods they don't use. And they watch their home prices rise due to economic development that doesn't bring them real prosperity. An economics professor at Claremont Graduate University described the location of San Bernardino County in a very visual way. He said if you look at a map and zoom out, you'll see San Bernardino County situated right between four massive metropolitan areas. The LA Basin, with its 18 million people and trillion-dollar GDP, San Diego, Phoenix, and Las Vegas. In total, 30 million people and $1.8 trillion in GDP surround it. He concluded that San Bernardino County is probably the largest logistics hub in the United States. But for whom is that a victory? That question isn't easy to answer. Looking at the Inland Empire of 2025, the picture is a perfect contradiction. On one hand, it's a story of California's most impressive growth. Between 2020 and 2024, when nearly every other major metropolitan area in the state lost population, the Inland Empire was the only one that truly grew. New residential communities appear constantly. New shopping centres are built. Local tax revenues increase. On the other hand, the quality of life for many who live here is being eroded in ways that aren't immediately obvious. Traffic is getting worse. Interstate 10 and Interstate 15, routes that were once the region's competitive advantage, are now among the most congested freight corridors in the United States. Every day, thousands of cargo trucks jostle with millions of private commuter vehicles. And because the entire region is planned as urban sprawl, no one lives close enough to a train station to take the train instead of driving. The logistics industry, which creates most of the jobs in the region, is on the brink of a major transformation. Automation is being implemented in warehouses. Robots are replacing people to arrange, sort, and transport goods. And there's a concern that researchers at UC Riverside have pointed out. The Inland Empire's economy is overly dependent on a single industry. If the logistics industry contracts due to tariffs, automation, or shifts in the global supply chain, this region will be vulnerable in a way that no alternative economic sector could quickly compensate for. This is the legacy of development without a master plan. Each small city competes with the others to attract new warehouses, each one generating a little more tax revenue, but no one was looking at the big picture until the entire region was locked into a single economic model. I want to conclude this story with one final detail. In 1895, Riverside was the richest city in America based on per capita income. This land was famous for its vast orange groves and the trains that carried its fruit everywhere. It was a symbol of America's 19th century agricultural prosperity. More than 100 years later, the Inland Empire is still the center of a massive distribution system. But instead of oranges, it's now iPhones. Instead of farmers who own their own land, it's now hundreds of thousands of warehouse workers earning hourly wages that are just enough to get by. That land was once a symbol of the American dream. Now, it's the machine that runs that dream for other people, while its own residents are left wondering if they still have a part in that dream. If you drive east from Los Angeles at dawn, you'll see the sun rise behind the San Bernardino Mountains, casting a golden light over the endless white roofs of warehouses stretching to the horizon. It's an image that is both beautiful, and in the small houses nestled beside those gigantic buildings, millions of people are starting a new day. They wake up, they go to work, they pack the things that other people will receive the very next day. And America's consumer economy keeps running, built upon a land whose geography sealed its fate centuries ago, even though none of the people living there today had a choice in the matter.